Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. So tonight we are doing another webinar for our ELF week, and tonight we have Bel Lacombe, and I'm going to read about her really quick. And she is a ELT materials writer and editor for the Brazilian public and private sectors. She has worked as an English language teacher, educator, and a coordinator in language institutes and schools. She holds a Cambridge RSA-COTE and an MA in Applied Linguistics from PUC, São Paulo. And she's going to talk about the BNCC, which is really important for us teachers in regular schools, private or public schools. So thank you so much for agreeing to be with us tonight, Bel. And the floor is yours. Thank you again.
Thank you, Priscilla. Well, thank you, all of you watching the webinar. Right now, I'm trying to open the questions and answers here. I'm not sure.
The questions and answers we are going to do after your webinar, and we are going to read the questions for you from the YouTube comments.
Okay.
Okay, so no worries about it.
Okay, all right. So, but thank you all for watching. And I want to give a special thank you to Bruno Andrade for the invitation. I need to confess, though, that the invitation scared me. I'm no ELF specialist. And to share this week with such brilliant people is both an honor, but also a bit overwhelming.
No worries. We were expecting someone to talk about BNCC. We needed someone, and we are really anxious and looking forward for your presentation.
Thank you. Well, but in my fear of making a fool of myself, I went through all of the last year's videos of BrELT ELF week, more specifically, Priscilla, yours, right? Since we had the same topic, and I do recommend to all of you who haven't seen it yet, it's there, it's great, you have to see it. And
thank you.
When I saw this, I said, okay, I need to have a radically different approach. I cannot, and all right,
okay.
My first part of preparation. And then I saw Robin Walker's, and then I saw Lucia Rodriguez yesterday. And of course, as Lucia is talking about ELF in the language institutes and in the schools, we have things in common, but I hope I'll be able to talk about it while I'm doing the presentation. So it doesn't become redundant, but complementary, I hope.
Yes, yes. So do you know how to share your screen? Everything is working fine?
Okay, I'll do it now. A minute. Very good.
Yes, we can see this. It's ELF and BNCC. Yeah, it's great. So the floor is yours. So you can start, and we are looking forward to it. Thank you again for being with us.
Thank you very much. Well, just to conclude, I hope that I think the new perspective that I can bring, it could be of interest to you, is the fact that I've been working for more than 10 years as a materials writer and editor, and not only for the private sector, but only the government sector. And that means that I'm very much in touch of government's expectations and requirements. And I hope this will help you in some way. So I divided the presentation in 3 stages. I begin with the definitions of ELF and the BNCC, and then how they relate. Then we're going to see some materials and analyze them together. Finally, some ideas of how to take action to be able to apply this in your school, in your working environment. And last of all, there's 5 minutes for a Q&A. The first part, I'll bring some definitions and then the relationship between ELF and lingua franca. Of course, I begin with the definition of ELF. And in any scientific field, the concepts are always evolving. The same is happening to English as a lingua franca. But I decided to start with one of the first, the earliest definitions that Jennifer Jenkins used. Of course, she was a plenary speaker in BrELT ELF Week last year, and certainly one of the most renowned references in ELF, right? And in the beginning of her studies, she defined English as a lingua franca as a contact language used by people who don't share a first language and often any other language. It seems a very good concept and very simple, which would be very nice, but this now belongs to the past, and we'll see how, right? Although this definition is outdated, right, at the time, in the beginning of lingua franca, and still there are some people who are outraged because of the fact that this new concept puts the native speakers not as owners or even guardians of, let's say, good language or good English, right? The idea of English as a lingua franca introduced the idea that the English doesn't belong to native speakers. It belongs to anyone who's speaking it. Well, let's see very briefly something that happened with this concept. In the first years of research, Jennifer Jenkins tried to establish a lingua franca core. And her idea was to establish some parameters for the teaching of pronunciation and identifying pronunciation aspects of ELF. Other important initiatives were the establishment of two corpora that would provide data for studies. One of them was the Vienna-Oxford International Corpus of English, or VOICE, and the other one was the Corpus of English as a Lingua Franca in Academic Settings, or ELFA. As you can see, in the beginning, there was a big emphasis in English as language, as something that people use. So there was a focus on form. They were trying to search or establish parameters for this system. Well, as years passed, new ideas contributed to this field of study. And beginning with the very definition of language, that changed to accept that language is not a thing, but rather a social practice. That means that language is not out there for me to see or observe, but it only exists as long as people are using it to do something. So this something is what we call social practices. This idea shifted the studies from form to systems and processes and interactions. Then fluidity. This is a word that Lucia used last night and that applies here. In studying social practices and not structure, the whole study will change. And then came studies of multilingualism. That, of course, it began as bilingualism when this field of study was brought into light again, because it's not new, it's old, but because of the birth of the European Union. So there was a renewed interest in the beginning bilingualism, which quickly evolved to multilingualism. And the studies in multilingualism came with impact for ELF as well, and brought to it the idea of translanguaging. And then translanguaging is a powerful new notion that our brain doesn't separate the languages we learn, as the first bilingual studies believed that we would have one part of our brain for English, another part for Portuguese, and they wouldn't mix. Translanguaging is stating that no, we use all the languages at the same time, and for all the languages, it means I'm not talking only about in my case English or Portuguese, but the gestures that I make. Languages are something a lot more open than just the linguistic features. Well, finally, the ideas, when we speak, we use the resources from all the languages that are available to us. So that one of the consequences of this is that English was once again demoted from a prominent place to become just another player in the orchestra of multi-language users. Finally, the complexity theory added to the idea that languages are yes, systems, but they are complex, dynamic, non-linear, they are self-organizing, emergent, sometimes chaotic, and adaptive. So again, the word fluidity that Lucia brought yesterday is a word that comes to mind. So it seems now like a totally new field of study with all these contributions. And so it needed a new definition. And in 2015, Jennifer Jenkins is proposing this new definition. Notice that the definition brings a shift from trying to find patterns to trying to understand complex and ever-changing processes that are involved in their interaction and communication. So notice that now multilingua franca, and not just lingua franca, is defined as communication. It's an action, it's a process and not a thing, it's not a language. So communication is a social practice in which the one thing the speakers will have in common is the English language, which then they can decide to use or not. Well, from this, we're going to talk a little about BNCC and then put them, the two of them together. Well, BNCC is a governmental document that's mandatory. That means it has to, the idea is that it is applied in all schools throughout the country. One of the objectives is to define what is essential in the learning in all areas of study, right? Because it's mandatory and essential, it is valid both for the public and private sectors, right? It aims, another aim is providing equal rights for studies students nationwide. That means if one day one student comes to from Manaus to Rio Grande do Sul, he will be able to sit in a classroom and know that he has what it takes to start this class in another state. But BNCC is base, so it's not a curriculum. It gives essential definitions. It defines what is essential for students to learn, but state curriculum, can be defined, they will be defined with some freedom, and as in private schools, I'm sure some schools will want to go beyond what's essential, but then again, they'll have to make sure that they will review what's required for each year or each level. This document will also guide all the policies and practices for 1, teacher education, 2, student evaluation, 3, educational content creation, and 4, infrastructure for education. Well, this is all that's written in the document, right? This is what they expect to happen. We still have to see what is to come, right? So let's see how ELF is mentioned in the BNCC. Let's see if what the government expects from schools and teachers and students, right? First, I'd like to say that the fact that ELF is in the BNCC, it is a political statement. As I said before, in the beginning, ELF was considered by some an outrageous theory, and exactly because it took the prominence and the dominance and the ownership of the language from native speakers and hegemonic countries. And so the BNCC adopts the same vision when it adopts ELF as one of its principles, right? So what's happening is the document is establishing a new teaching point of view. I'll be more specific about it in a minute. And this point of view will require specifically from teachers who are used to old ELT practices and beliefs, this will require change, because not everything is easy to deal with. It's a new way of thinking. Well, let's see what I'm talking about. When I say that ELF is ELF in the BNCC is a political statement, I'm going to go into details of this. First, because English is not considered to be a foreign language, because it doesn't belong to native speakers only anymore, so it's not foreign to anyone. It's not foreign to speakers of English throughout the world. It is not, and should not be considered foreign to the students who are learning it, right? ELF recognizes that English doesn't belong to hegemonic countries, such as the United States or England, and it requires that students should be in touch with greater variety of Englishes. Right. It also acknowledges that English doesn't belong to any territory. Right. English is not in the countries, but it is a language that is spoken around the world by speakers of many different first languages. So we cannot place it anymore in terms of territory. In the BNCC, there is no recommendation of best models for grammar or vocabulary, spelling, or pronunciation. Finally, there's no desired proficiency. In ELF, the aim for students, in EFL, the aim is for students to attain native-like proficiency. That's the goal of English as a foreign language, right? For ELF, it doesn't make any sense. And when the government adopts this theory, what they're saying is that the students are not required to attain any sort of proficiency. What they want is the students should be able to communicate and participate in the global community using all the repertoire they have available. Well, I talked about all the no's, and now I'm going to talk about what it embraces, right? So the concept embraces interculturality, which is an acknowledgement and respect of differences and awareness that they are realized in actual social discourse practices. So language only happens when we do things with the language, right? So this awareness also will promote critical thinking about the ways people are using the language to and creating their own identities in different parts of the world. And the students will create their own identities while they're speaking English. This will make them, the study of English will help them analyze the world, the others, and themselves. So critical reflection that I've just said. English as a social practice is multiliterate, which means it's realized in verbal, visual, corporal, and audiovisual languages. So it has hybrid uses and multilingual speakers. Remember that Lucia also used the word hybrid yesterday. So it makes the language open for new ways of saying things, expressing. People will express themselves in fluid ways. Fluidity, again, comes, the word shows up. And finally, English as a symbolic asset, because it's something that can belong to the students and can empower and integrate them in the world. So that will require a new attitude from the teachers, right? This means in welcoming differences, all sorts of differences, differences in uses, different cultures, different accents, different vocabulary. There is a very hard thing, I'm sure, for all teachers, which is letting go of correctness, precision, and proficiency. We need to move past these concepts, right? And this is written specifically in the BNCC, right? This is not, these are not my words. It is there in the document. For example, they say that use of ain't shouldn't be treated as an exception or as a curiosity. Ain't when in language, in spoken language, right? But it should be treated as a legitimate way of speaking. That is part of people's repertoire, and we need to understand who's speaking and this use of a language, and this is okay. So, in adopting English as a lingua franca, as an approach to the teaching of English, the BNCC emphasizes the importance of culture in the teaching and learning of a language, and expects to break free of the idea of corrections and precisions and etc. Well, a friend of mine, when I was preparing, asked me, Bel, will you talk about ensino médio? Oh, and I said, yes, of course. Well, I have very little to say, I'm afraid. The text, the very recent text that that came out in December for the ensino médio doesn't add much to the ideas that were present in the for ensino médio, ensino fundamental. In fact, it's reassuring that they are presenting again the same concepts and the same ideas. So everything I've just said that came in the document for ensino fundamental came back again for ensino médio. So this is something good. However, we don't know what's going to happen to ensino médio. There is a document, there's still a document missing for us to know how to deal with the percursos or itinerários, as the government is calling them. So let's wait for the next chapters. Well, in this part, I'm going to bring some material, and I hope that you and I can work together. So, Priscilla, I think I'm going to need your help at this point, because I need to know what the people are saying. So yes, we can interact, because we cannot see the dialogues, right? So what I'm going to do is, there is this, this is a little piece of a book, and my questions are, what kind of book is this? And how can you tell? And by kind, we're going to try and separate two kinds here. Traditional ELT textbooks and ELF oriented material. I'd like for them to give me an idea of what they think this one is.
The thing is, I don't think they can see it really clearly. It's no, we can't really see what is in the text.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can. No, I cannot.
I'm really trying to read it, but
is it too small?
Yeah, it's really small. I don't think they will be able to see it.
Oh, that's a pity.
Yeah, but I can, if you want, I can kind of interact with you. I'll try to read. Let's see. Alice's World, right?
Yes, that's it. But it's a pity that you cannot see it because then.
Yeah, not even me. I can't really see it. It's really small. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Let me see if I can do something. Just a minute. Mm.
Something that happens when we're having a live hangout is that Google tries to make it easier to broadcast, so the quality lowers a little bit. So then it makes it difficult for us to be able to read it
Yeah.
when it's too small.
Yeah, I think it's just because it's a small, so it's kind of hard to read from the screen.
I can make it better. Just a minute. I'm not sure if I'll be able to make it. But I'll try. How does it look now? Is it any better? Or still difficult?
Let me check on YouTube if they can read it. Hey, could you share the screen again? You're sharing it. Okay. So everyone, write in the comments if you're seeing it or not.
No, I'm not.
So maybe you could read it for us, Bel. Do you mind?
Okay. I'll read the beginning and not everything. Then I think that will be it. So here is a small text, and it says Alice's World. Today, rain in Seattle. Tomorrow, sun in Dubai. It's time to go. We're going to fly out tomorrow. I'm so excited. Okay. Oops. I'm so excited. Okay, I'm a little sad to say goodbye to my friends, but we aren't going to be in Dubai too long. Mom's contract is only for 18 months. Actually, that's a pretty long time. But I'm definitely not going to get bored. There are lots of things to do in Dubai. Here's what I'm going to do. And then she starts listing what she's going to do. What is your feeling? Is it traditional material or elf-oriented material? Can you tell?
Let's see what everybody's saying. Let's see. So, well, we do have a lack of elf-oriented materials, right? So, I think now everybody's trying to catch up with elf right now. Someone just said, Daniele, she just said that it looks traditional. She thinks looks traditional. BrELT said it looks traditional as well.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we've got two answers. That's enough. Yes, it is. It comes from a very traditional book, and we can tell because there is an overuse of a structure. In this case, going to. The language is graded. But more than this, there's no authorship or no context. The book tries to put this in a frame that looks like an internet navigator, but we don't really know if it's a blog or a post in social media. It's not very clear. So therefore, there's no identifiable genre. And if there's no genre, that means that this is not a real interaction. So again, if you remember that the definition of language is one of social use and social interaction. If this is not a real person, there is no language to be, analyzed here, right? Another characteristic is that this is American, and I put it in inverted commas, American English. It's supposed to be because traditional ELT material will bring this definition that's expected by students. Well, here again, I'll try to make this slide a little better. Just a minute. I'm going to show you different kind, different. Okay, here we go. Can you see it?
Just a minute.
It's loading.
It's still loading. We are back. We are back at your camera, actually.
Yeah, I'm getting there. It's all right. I'm sorry about that.
That's
no,
okay.
no worries. Yeah.
All right, now is it?
Yeah. I can see it. Can everybody see it? Could you
Yes.
comment? Yeah, they said they can see it.
Okay, is it traditional or elf-oriented?
A minute, so
I'm sorry?
No, just waiting for some answers. Let's see what people say. Let me check for their answers. We have Linnea saying that for her it looks elf-oriented. Jessica as well said it looks elf-oriented as well. Danielle said it looks elf-oriented. So yeah, everybody so far thinks it looks elf-oriented.
But then why? What are the characteristics you see that can tell you that?
Someone says that the Linnea is saying that it's less wordy compared to the previous one. Daniele said that's more internationally minded.
True. And this is one of the characteristics, right? We we start to get away from hegemonic countries. So we have someone from Nigeria whose name is Dami Adesina, right? And not John or Mary. And so, yes, she's from Nigeria, and she lives in New Zealand. This is one thing. What else?
Let me just check for more answers. So Larissa said the person is real. It is a real person. Daniele also said it's not a particular type of English. Thanks.
Okay. What Larissa said is very important, right? It is a real person, right? And if you, it's probably too small for you to see, but we can see in the book, we can see where this text comes from. It's a magazine in New Zealand, right? And this girl, she is a part of a youth jury for a kind of contest. So she's introducing herself because she's one of the juries of some kind of contest. I'm sorry. So we have here, it seems little, but it is a lot of context, a lot more than traditional books usually bring. And also it is you know, a different reality, right? Can you see this one?
Yeah, this one is easier to read. I think they can read it as well.
I'm gonna try to read only the I think the poster is clearer, but I'll try to read the activity. It reads: imperative. Number 1, read the following fragments from the text on page 122, then mark the correct item that completes each sentence below. Then the sentences: report animal abuse, guard the home team, contact your local authorities. A, in all fragments, the verbs in bold, report, guard, contact, are used to encourage people to stop animal cruelty or describe people's habits involving animal abuse. Activity B, the sentence guard the home team is equivalent to attack the home team or protect the home team. And C, the verbs in bold are in the imperative or present simple tense. How does it feel? Traditional or elf-oriented?
Let's wait for some answers. Let's see what people have to say. Danielle said that home team sounds very American. Jessica said that it looks traditional. And Danielle also said it's so traditional.
Okay, but it's not.
Really?
No. And the little things, the little details that it is using is the fact that it's drawing on authentic texts, and the fact that it's there is work on use and meaning, and not only form, right? So here there is it tries to give students an idea of maybe it's not so good, but at least you're trying to say that the imperative serves to encourage people to do something rather than describe, which would be probably associated with the simple present, right? So maybe the material is not so good, but yes, this one is also ELF oriented.
Nice.
Can you
Well,
see? No, probably not.
let's see.
I'm gonna read.
Yeah, this one is really hard to read.
It says here, let's learn how to pronounce the names of family members, right? And then there is a table, and there is the in as in mother, and the T as in daughter. And then there is a tip down here. Dos desafios de aprender uma segunda língua é compreender e produzir sons que não existem na língua materna. Uma forma de aprender esses sons é saber como eles são formados. Embora seja importante saber pronunciar os sons, não é necessário ter sotaque parecido com o de um estadunidense ou um inglês para se comunicar com facilidade. O que você precisa é garantir que a sua pronúncia seja clara o suficiente para que a pessoa com quem você esteja conversando o compreenda. E aqui do lado, I'm sorry. Oh my God. And then here on the side there is language variation. Há variações carinhosas para se referir aos membros da família em inglês. Veja algumas abaixo. Você conhece outras? And then there is a short list. And I'm sorry, but the answer is already here, right? This is another ELF-oriented book, right? And you can tell because it talks about intelligibility. Another of the concepts that Lucia mentioned yesterday, which is one of the focuses of ELF, and very different from the EFL, right? Which is the focus on proficiency, right? And here it also, another thing that tells you, it's the fact that it's showing the varieties, right? It's not only focused on American or British or etc. Wow. Oh my God, this is going to be really hard, but I'd love for you to see this. Let me try it. Make it bigger. Can you see this one?
Yeah, it's intelligible. We can read it. It's quite clear.
Traditional or ELF-oriented?
Just waiting for some answers. Let's see. Let's see what people say. Jessica said she thinks it's ELF-oriented.
Why?
Let's see if anybody else has an answer. Clinea said it seems an activity on genre, so maybe English as a foreign language. But I think she meant ELF. I think she meant ELF. I don't know, because sometimes when you type, in the beginning when I was starting to study ELF, every time I typed ELF, my phone corrected to EFL. So it might be that.
Yes, I think so too. Yeah, and she's right. The textbook is dealing with genre, and genre by definition means social communication, social practices, right? It is also working with critical thinking. It's bringing in the notion of stereotype and helps students go beyond uh, what's literal in the text. And in this case, the text that's bringing stereotyped ideas is exactly the one that you can see that says that in a gender revealing party, there's the baseball for the boy and the ballet for the girl. I think we're all familiar with this pink and blue concept. Well, I hope this is going to be clearer. In order to make it, because our time is running out, so I'm just going to talk a little about these two books, right? So on your left, there's a traditional book with illustrations. Again, they bring all sorts of stereotypes. So the baby is a girl, so she's in pink. The baby dances ballet, of course, because she's a girl. And the context for the vocabulary presentation are illustrations. This is what will help students identify and understand vocabulary. Whereas in the material on the right, you have a picture of a real family and a text, not just scattered words or expressions, but a text to present family names and family concepts, right? Well, two other material. I hope you can more or less see it. And again, I'll try to be brief. So on the left, you have in listening activities for traditional books, what we have is scripted listenings. In ELF-oriented Brazilian material, we have real audios, we have real varieties, and again, what you see is real faces of real people around the world. So here we have this Birna from Iceland and Alice from Scotland. And well, there are other people here in this activity from other parts of the world. And well, to finish is, so what can we do, right, to help ourselves when this new environment is in the new expectations and the new requirements in our profession? Well, as I work in the publishing industry, I say get help from the publishers, right? As I told you, the publishing business has been dealing with demands that are, ELF has only appeared officially in, I think, 2016 in public documents, but a lot of the concepts that it comes with the concept of ELF, we have been dealing in government materials. So it was easier for us in the publishing industry to adapt and produce the materials required by the BNCC, right? So try and find and search out for the publisher, your representative, your commercial representative. Ask them for suggestions, for complementary material, for whatever. They will be able to help, probably, right? Find school support, right? Find, see if your school can promote or support, sometimes financially, courses and etc. For your own development, there are many courses that you can take. There are already universities that are dealing with the readings of the BNCC and how to help. Another new document, governmental document that came out, it's not the last the final draft yet, but the government will issue guidelines for teacher development. This will help redesign even the curricula for universities, right? And of course, my suggestion is, you as a teacher, get the material you have. Lucia talked about that yesterday. You have some material. It might not be the ideal, but you can complement it. There's so much available to us in the internet, right? And one of the ideas, I think, for I see as a beginning teacher, I remember that using models was an easy way to bridge the gap between everything that I didn't know, and I didn't know how to do. So I needed good models so that I could try and do something that's similar. I didn't know in which ways they were good or better than me, but I knew they were better, so I tried to copy. So one idea is to we have in Brazil a lot of material that have been developed for the government that has really, really good work, right? And this material may give you some hints and may give you some ideas on how to deal with some of the issues that are presented in the BNCC. So this is my suggestion. So I think now we can go to the questions. Priscilla, is my timing correct?
Sorry, yes. Let's see if we have any questions. Thank you so much for your webinar. It was really, really interesting. Really, well, it helped me a lot now that I'm as a public school teacher to know how to deal with BNCC and ELF in a practical way, because sometimes theory gets overwhelming and we don't get the practicality. And your webinar was very practical and it helped me a lot. Thank you very much. Let's see if we have any questions. Well, we do have some comments. Larissa just said that unfortunately we are used with this kind of stereotypes in materials. I think that's what you meant, that we do see a lot of stereotypes in ELT materials, mainly the more traditional ones that are not changing as fast as the newer ones that are coming out now. What do you think?
I'm not sure I got the question.
No, it was not a question. It was more like a comment. She said that it's very common to see this kind of stereotypes in materials. So what do you think? Let me just read again. Yeah, unfortunately, we are used with these stereotypes. We shouldn't be used to them, but it's quite common to see them in ELT materials.
And the problem is, for example, any prejudice, it's the same with feminism, and with when we talk about diversity, and there are lots of people that will say, "Oh, I'm a feminist," or "I embrace diversity," but without realizing, we sometimes have prejudiced actions, prejudiced ways of saying things. And the other day I was, walking in the street, and someone, I don't remember, a car like threw water in me, and I was angry. And I say, "Oh, viado." And then I said, "Wow, look at the word I'm using, right, when I'm angry, right?" And so it's in all of us. Even when we are trying to pay attention to these things. So stereotypes, they're very hard to be taught.
Yes, yes, I agree. I agree. It's ingrained in us somehow. So that's why we need to get through change and deconstruct our ideas about English, about stereotypes, and that's why I think ELF is very liberating for teachers. Well, so we have two other questions. Elton is asking, how do you see ELF being integrated into BNCC in an effective way? What do you think?
I think it would take time. Because and then there's the concept of effective, right? I think it will require because it's a different mindset, right? It requires a lot of study from teachers, right? I think probably what's the most overwhelming concept is that of not requiring any specific proficiency. There is no other concept. So I know that in Robin Walker's presentation, the teachers were worried about what about the proficiency test, this is what students come to us asking for. I need to pass a certain proficiency test. So how can we just ignore it and start over? How can we do this, right? So it will take time, and there's a lot to read and a lot to understand. There's learning to create new ways of assessing students, new ways of teaching, new material creation.
Yes, yes, I agree. And we have another question from Jessica. Elf-oriented material grabs students' attention better. Oh, no, it's not a question, it's a comment. She thinks that elf-oriented materials grab students' attentions better. Traditional books are kind of outdated. I kind of agree with her. What do you think?
Well, I'm not the right person to ask because, of course, I believe in ELF. I believe in teaching through social practices. I believe that languages are complex and ever-changing. So I think yes, it is more interesting. And there was, if I could, there was a message from a friend of mine. He teaches in Ensino Médio. Ninguém knows him. Rafa. He shares these concepts and beliefs, and the students wrote him such a beautiful message saying, "Teacher, we We now have a different view of what language is, of why we're studying it, and we want to interact with the world. We are. It was such a beautiful message. So I think yes, it is. It is. It's powerful.
It's empowering, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Well, I'm not the right person to comment on Alpha as well because I can be very biased, but I do think it's empowering. Um, let's see. We have some other comments. Let's see. Linnea should just comment that since we are used to having goals such as passing international exams, how can ELF be challenging? Or I think that she wants to say that ELF can be challenging in a scenario that we need to pass exams. What do you think?
I agree. I think it will be because specifically for the private sector, right? There will be this disconnection because, of course, they have to attend to the needs of students and parents, right? And yes, they want their children to pass proficiency tests, so they'll have to be able to prepare the students for that. And this is different from the objectives in ELF education. So in this sense, there should be a lot of accommodations in the private sector, but they have the advantage of probably having students in a different, with more hours of study than the public schools, which is one thing that will put them in an advantageous position. But for the public sector, what the government is providing schools right now is more material than ever. Teachers will receive not only the book, but also assessments, suggestions for assessment, and digital material, and etc. So there's a huge amount of material that the teachers will have access to. This in the public sector. In the private sectors, teachers will have to create their own.
Yes. Okay, so I think that's it. We don't have any. Oh, we have one last question from Elton. So, how does a traditional teaching mindset affect the development of ELF in BNCC? Last question.
What's the traditional teacher? Sorry.
How does the traditional teaching mindset affect the development of ELF in BNCC?
Totally. Because if you in every change, this happens in every change that is decided from top to bottom, right? Top-down decisions, they they just make you do things. Or you have the chance to to digest new concepts and new ideas. So what usually happens is that the traditional teacher will keep on doing what he's used to doing and what he believes in, because okay, any good professional knows that what he does makes sense. It has made sense up to now, when somebody's coming and telling him, listen, what you're doing is not right. Okay, so this person will not out of the blue decide that, okay, well, my whole life I was doing something that's not good. No, right? So this will affect the the introduction of this new concept, of course. And I believe that for some time, right, the old and the new will come together and will be together, and not always in, you know, ideal ways. But then again, what is ideal? I don't know.
Yeah, true. Okay, so thank you again, Belle. It was really great. I loved it. I think we can see from the interaction that everybody loved it. Just a reminder, the certificates, I'm going to share my screen really quick. The certificates are going to be available on this link. Let me just share it really quick. Here. Can everybody see it? So you go to this link, fill in the form, and you're going to have your certificates. You have 30 minutes to go there, fill in the form to have the certificates. And tomorrow, you're going to have Sábio Siqueira. Just a second. I'm sorry. Are you seeing me? Yeah. You're going to have Sábio Siqueira to talk about teacher education and English as a lingua franca, critical educators for an intercultural world. So Sábio Siqueira is one of my idols in ELF. He's a very well-known ELF person, ELF researcher. So I'm really excited to have him with us. And I'll see you all tomorrow. Good night, and thank you again, Belle.
Thank you very much, Priscilla. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.